All right, welcome back to our main stage, everyone. Now that you are familiar with the SBIR and STTR programs from a high-level overview, we're going to dive down into a crucial part of these programs, which is innovation. As we covered, innovation can mean different things to different people and agencies. At the heart of it, though, innovation is about doing something different for a better result. You are changing the way you look at the world or the issues that define it and trying to come up with a solution that improves things. Innovation is not just about making a new product that improves others' lives, it's also about improving your own. Businesses that integrate a culture of innovation across their organization have better impacts, make better decisions for their future, and they set themselves up for success. But how do you integrate innovation into your company? Well, what can you do to make sure you are headed down the right path? Where else can you turn to for support and growth? To address some of these points and to discuss how to integrate a culture of innovation into your organization, I want to welcome our next panel to the stage, which will be moderated by Sue Prolozny, Executive Director of Global IQ. Sue has spent most of her career in the bioscience industry, starting in biomedical sales and management with Becton Dickinson for 10 years. After Sue received her master's degree in marketing from Webster University in Geneva, Switzerland, and spent the next 25 years in business development, working with biotech, medical devices, and research organizations. As founder of Global IQ, a strategic business development consultancy, Sue has managed strategic alliances and partnerships with companies ranging from startups to Fortune 500, which include businesses like Agilent Technologies, Thermo Fisher, and the New Mexico Economic Development Department. She will be joined by panelists Dr. Bill Goodman, David Kiston, Meena Rajagopal, and Dan Sir. Sue, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Garrett. Thank you. You know, when I hear what you're saying about my career, I have to tell everyone I started when I was 12. And so I want to welcome everyone to this panel. And what I'd like to do is have everyone starting out by just introducing themselves real quickly. That would be awesome. Tell us what you do. Let's start with you, Dr. Rajagopal.
Hi, Sue. Hi, everyone. My name is Meena Rajagopal. I'm a program officer for the Small Business Program within the Office of Strategic Alliances at the National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences at the NIH. Happy to be here.
Thank you. And I'll move on. I'm just going across my screen. David Kiston, please.
Hi, I'm David Kiston. I work at Sandia National Laboratories. I'm part of the Technology Partnerships Group, and I manage a team that focuses on economic development. So we connect lab researchers and capabilities to small businesses and other industry folks through a couple of technical assistance programs and a science and technology park. Thanks.
Thank you. And then moving on to Dan Sir.
Hi, I'm Dan Sewer. I am, what I do mostly now is I'm a consultant for mostly small companies. I have a couple of companies that I'm on retainer with that I help with their strategic planning as far as grants go. I'm here today to talk about one company in particular, Inexol, who I've been working with for about 20 years and has used SBIR grants from NIH, NSF, and USDA to advance their simulation and e-learning business. Sort of evolved from a work for hire company into a company that is focused on first responders in that space.
Thank you. And now to you, Bill Goodman.
I'm Dr. Bill Goodman. I'm the founder and CEO of Goodman Technologies. GT is a non-traditional small business, and we've won a lot of SBIRs, and the space we've work in is nanocomposites for extreme environments, and delighted to be here with New Mexico Past and the panel today.
Thank you. We're going to start this off pretty broadly, and I'm going to ask you to each answer this. What does innovation mean to you? And we'll start with you, Dr. Rajagopal.
Okay, innovation for, I would say, to us at NCATS, at NIH, is probably tools and technologies that can accelerate the conversion of basic science discoveries into health solutions, right? And we are all aware of the several roadblocks that already exist in this translational process. And at NCATS, we want to promote programs that not just identifies, but also mitigates these bottlenecks. So that's innovation to me. Breakthrough technologies and tools that address, that can bring health solutions to the market and the clinic rapidly to all patients. I guess that's innovation for us at NCATS.
Thank you. And now to you, David.
Yeah, so when we think about innovation at the labs, it's as a technology creator and also as a service provider. So we focus on a really broad suite of technology areas. We're especially concerned with national security and energy security. And so innovations in our DNA, we are a lab of around 13,000 people. More than half are engineers and scientists that are working on technology solutions to some of these challenges. So in my group, I'm especially focused on how we continue to innovate internally, but also how we can augment that and really magnify it with industry and academic partnerships.
Thanks. I'm going to come back to you on that one, David. And now to you, Dan.
For me, innovation is sort of, solving that problem today, but really looking at your technology roadmap for your space and trying to solve those problems that are farther out into the future, 3 or 5 years. I'm sure the kind of things that Dr. Goodman looks at. So those are, to me, that's the innovation, is that evolution of your product or how it's going to fit into the marketplace at some point.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Dr. Bill.
So in the context of a founder, I'm going to go with the root meaning from the Latin, innovare, and it literally means to renew. And so what are we renewing? Well, if we look at innovation as a process of renewal, we can look at new domains, a new product, a service, and the way we renew those is we bring them up to date with modern technologies. This can be new processes for business management. It can be new processes for manufacturing. We can update things by introducing new techniques, such as the additive manufacturing that we do. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is to create new value for our customers. And that's what innovation means to me.
That's a really great perspective. And thank you for the Latin lesson. That's great. So we heard a lot today about how SBIR and STTR grants are helping move innovation towards commercialization. But what does that really mean? Should people be thinking beyond the award, when they're planning their innovation? And again, I'll start with you, Meena.
Sure, happy to take a stab at that. But, well, absolutely, yeah. I think innovators have to, think about the big picture, which is how they can be successful when they take their product to the market. But that said, NIH SBIR STTR funding mechanism is the first step, right, if you will. It is the largest source of seed funding that is available to small businesses. But absolutely, I would think the innovators have to be really thinking about the big picture and, if needed, maybe even refine and fine-tune their ideas depending on customers' needs by doing some customer discovery. So I think they should definitely look at the big picture on how to be successful at the market.
Sure, that makes sense too. Who else would like to weigh in on that question? What else should they be looking at? Okay, Dr. Bill.
Yeah, so again, as a small business doing SBIR and STTR, in this case, the customer is actually going to provide you with a problem or a need, and the proposal that you're going to prepare and and present should show an understanding of what the customer's problem is, but then come up with that unique and innovative solution to address this. And the grant that the customer is going to give you will provide you, the small business, with the funds to prove your point. And one key item is today, when you're answering a customer's need, you definitely need to be focusing on a dual use for the product or process or domain, and look at the marketplaces that can be used in. The government seed fund is very much about growing the industrial base, and the government needs a supply chain. So your attention to the business nature and the marketplace is just as important as your solution is.
Thanks, Bill. And you know, that touches on one of our other questions that I have here regarding your innovation. Should it be more focused on what you intended it to be, the outcome, or more focused on what the market really needs? And I think, Bill, you really addressed that. Does somebody else want to speak to that in terms of letting your innovation transform with the market?
I'll try for a second. I think there's sort of a trade-off, because sometimes the market doesn't know what it needs. And, especially when you're looking at NIH, NSF, USDA, those topics are pretty open, and those are the main areas that I work in. So somebody, the customer, like a DOD or a Department of Energy, isn't looking for a specific solution, for a specific question, whereas NIH is just sort of broadly is a pretty broad open topics. So I think that it's important that, like Bill said, to make sure that the product has some commercialization uses, to really explore where that can go, and to be breaking it down into pieces, that innovation. There's a lot of opportunities in innovation. Like I was working with a client yesterday who has a way of delivering drugs that's sort of unique. And we were setting up the roadmap for SBIRs of breaking it down into, there's a manufacturing component that needs to happen. There's drug deliveries. There's a whole bunch of different indications that it could work on. So, I mean, thinking about it in those pieces and parts is really important.
So then how do you relate innovation to the strategic value of the business? How does it affect that business strategically as you're forming it? Anyone?
Yeah, I would say, for a lot of the work that we do focuses on early stage research, and a lot of the companies I think, that are here and interested in the SBIR and STTR program, you're looking at early problems, right? And a lot of times this is kind of pre-market. And so I don't remember who it was, but someone once described the entrepreneur experience as being really similar to, an artist, right? Where you're going down this kind of unknown road, right? And to Bill's point, you want to find that dual use. I think in this phase, you need, the determination to get to those markets, but also the support to be able to think about it broadly, right? And be able to iterate and let the research kind of take you in the logical direction. So, the funding is important, and having those kind of end goals is really good. And, hopefully more than anything, it just gives entrepreneurs the space to do what they do best. So, to think of the funding and those goals as more than a check, but, sort of validation that you're at least starting on a good path, but also, have the time and the headspace to take it in a different direction, if that's what you're saying.
Sure. Okay. Well, and funding can influence your innovation. Do you feel that the vehicle, be it a grant, a federal grant or fund or a CRADA, might change your innovation or how you're looking at your innovation?
Yeah, I'll jump on that one. I think the answer is yes, of course it does. And the reason why is there are many strategies for innovation. To reiterate, you have processes, you have products, you have services, and anyhow, you have to look at your product development. That's one thing. You have to look at the service that you're going to provide to your customers and be able to deliver on that. And each customer is going to have their own unique personality and company culture to address, and they may expect a total different type of service from you. So, as an example, my NASA customers versus my DoD customers, I have a whole different expectation. The other thing that's important, from the small business side, is identifying your various business models. Business model for DoD and NASA and government is a totally different model from the commercial customers, and they move at two different speeds, and their demands and their contracts are entirely different too. And that's going to have a direct impact on the last thing, which is most important, is your cash flow and your revenue streams. So that's what I have to say about the different customers and end uses.
And what I'm hearing, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, who's that?
Let me throw in something quick here. Is I always look at phase one as the feasibility study, and that gives us an opportunity to pivot towards the end of phase one if we find out that we're doing something the customer doesn't want. Hopefully you've built some strategic partners that are, interested in your technology and stuff, and you have them involved in the phase one. But that's you're definitely going to pivot a little bit. I mean, I've never seen one where somebody didn't say when they did their phase two proposal that, oh, we don't need to do anything different. This is exactly what we planned in phase one. I have never seen that, but so keep that in mind. It's okay to be flexible. It's but figure out what the market needs during your 6 months when you're funded.
It's sort of like a proof of concept in that first phase, and then you hit on this, Dan, which is where I was wanting to go in terms of innovation doesn't happen in a box. So how important is it that you're able to, or you're open to collaboration with either other partners or other people's ideas? How important is collaboration?
I'll take it. So it's very helpful if, at least within your organization, you have someone who's the creative visionary, kind of like Jobs versus Cook with Apple. But working with a variety of viewpoints and collaborators or partners is a way to open the door for innovation. Different people are going to have, we're all in the same room together, and if we sat down and say, what was innovation, we're all going to have a different answer again. So when we bring a bunch of people into the room, they're going to have different viewpoints on what needs to happen in the business, or what happens with the product or service, or how we're going to handle this particular customer. So, and as a founder, you can very easily get into tunnel vision, is what I'll say. And so it's great to have people that you can trust and advise you. Advisors are a good thing, to keep you out of that pitfall.
Yeah, being open to other perspectives versus that tunnel vision that you said that can often happen with the founder. They have this great idea, and it's sometimes really hard to move that path. And so, inviting other people into the room, so to speak, and or when you're in that phase one and you're testing it out, being able to pivot, as Dan said, is really important. So do you think innovation happens naturally, or is it something that you have to really work at? What's your thoughts on that? Maybe we'll start, Mina, how do you feel about that?
Well, I think Bill and Dan would probably be better explaining that because I'm giving you the agency's perspective on that, Sue. But I can take a stab at that. I would say, you know,
Maybe describe how the agency looks at the innovation. That might be a better
yeah,
question.
well, you know, it makes sense that innovation cannot just happen, you know, with just one company cannot do it all, right? So innovators need help from others. And you know, to Bill's point, you know, they do have to have this innovation ecosystem, I would think. You know, for instance, when seeking a novel, say, solutions, it only makes sense to look beyond your usual connections and reach out to, say, your weak ties who can provide you with some thoughtful insights. So in that sense, I think it would make sense to, you know, just don't be afraid, but just reach out and expand your professional network and, you know, do some customer discovery.
Thank you. Dan or Bill, you want to weigh in on that one? In terms of,
I can go. So, you know, innovation, working with, I think it happens in the collaborative environment. I mean, even if it's internal, like Bill was talking about with teams internal to the company, if you're lucky enough to have, you know, as a startup, have enough creative people around, or working with somebody like David through Accreta, working with any of the national labs, all those things. You know, us as a small business, we're borrowing people's credibility all the time in our proposal, in everything. So having those relationships with national labs, with NIH. I mean, I did a proposal recently where from one institute, I got a letter of support from one institute for my small business that was applying to another institute, which was pretty interesting. So, I mean, so anything you can do to get those, borrow that credibility, and that also helps with the innovation. Bouncing the idea off it verifies sort of what you're talking about makes sense to somebody.
Yeah, I'll say on that too, you know, as a government contractor, I'm probably the worst person on the panel to answer this question. Everything we do is planned. There's a sign. I sit here in the global rainforest that says, you know, engineer serendipity, which is a good way of, I think, describing the culture. But what we do try to do is create an operating environment that opens us up to innovation. So like Dan was saying, you know, I think through partnerships, we do this really well. We have a program called Autonomy for Hypersonics. That's a good example of this. Sandy has worked in hypersonics for a long time, hypersonic vehicles, which is a really challenging space. It's really hard to get some of this work out because a lot of it is very national security focused. But the autonomy side of it is an area where industry has just leapfrogged, you know, a lot of our capabilities. And so we've created this platform where university partners and industry partners can come in, and we have this shared user facility that's offsite, where, you know, we let people come in and get some revs on these systems, and yeah, we get huge benefit from this. So we sort of, you know, I think there are times when, you know, it's advantageous to get some of that lend credibility. We also borrow, you know, the agility and the creativity from small businesses and from academic partners. So it's a good, I think, back and forth.
absolutely. A big part of what I do that's relevant here, especially for startups, is connecting them with the right resources, and then they learn to collaborate in that regard. And so tell me how important you think that is in terms of achieving your innovation, that you be able to connect with the right people.
So I stole something from Napoleon Hill, who was coached by a guy named Dale Carnegie, and all these people who are no longer on the planet have have books and whatnot. But one of the things they talk about is, you know, getting into a mastermind. I totally think David undersold himself because he had a great answer there, and he actually alluded to this process of, you know, masterminding. And the more people that are experts in different areas and can bring different viewpoints in your circle of masterminds or advisors or collaborators is awesome. As an example, I personally go out to lunch with a friend of mine who's a chief of surgery at a hospital. And although he's a surgeon and does things, he's working with technology and robotic systems and always thinking about how they can do things better, you know, in the hospital and in a surgery. And we just had a brilliant mastermind yesterday on artificial intelligence. So, you know, diversity is in your circles is an awesome way to continue to innovate, see what other people are doing, seeing how they're getting ahead and innovating.
Anybody want to add to that? One of the things I'd like to say to add to that for you, Bill, is I recently started working with a group here. It's like a founders forum. And I attended their first, for me, it was their first meetup, but they've been meeting for a few months. And it was so amazing to have these founders in the same room, these people with really brilliant ideas, to see them feeding off of each other, you know, and that kind of a collaboration, and also kind of commiserate in terms of, man, they'll talk about the real hurdles that they have to jump through. And I think it's really important to keep that culture in New Mexico going, this collaborative culture, and also to be able to share with them what's available to them in terms of resources, especially a resource for their innovation. I'm going to ask each of you to share a resource that you think is an important one, especially for our audience, for innovation. Okay. Bill, you're shaking your head. I'm going to start with you.
All right. Innovation absolutely requires creativity and a willingness for risk. Okay. You got to be a risk taker. And I think there are four items that one must do. One, you got to be a rule breaker. Okay. You can't be innovative if you're always following the rules. The second thing is to collect ideas and get them from a variety of sources, as I've just said, your advisors, your collaborators, your masterminders. By the way, the Small Business Administration Emerging Leaders Program, I got to collaborate with a lot of C-levels in that excellent program. Another key item, you have to be a dreamer. You have to imagine the impossible. I mean, I always look back at Orson Welles and the invisible ray that the Martian used. Today we have high energy lasers that are in the infrared and you can't see the high power beam, right? And a lot of people wear Apple watches. That was the total Dick Tracy communications device when I was a kid. And the last thing you want to do, surround yourself with an A-team, okay? Get the best people, get the best attorneys, get the best accountants, get the best technologists, surround yourself with the A-team.
Dan, if you could weigh in on and be a good resource for.
I think resources for innovation. I mean, I think there's everything that Bill just talked about, collaborators and the like. I mean, I lean on the national labs a lot, especially USDA, you know, but also energy and every place else. And look what they're working on and what's coming out of their space. The other thing I do a lot, and I've worked with hundreds of clients, and there's almost no cases that I've had where somebody's talking about a new innovation that I can't go to the SBIR website and put it into the past awards and find something that was sort of like that, especially recent things. You know, what's what's happening in that field, which agencies or institutes are funding it, those kind of questions. So I think that, NIH Reporter, if you're doing medical stuff, looking at what's out there in NIH Reporter, those are the type of tools, because it sort of gives you an idea where the field's going and the context of what your innovation is, how it fits within that space.
Yeah, absolutely right. And we are so lucky to have the national labs here, and the fact that they're so engaging, with the entrepreneur audience. How about you, David, if you want to weigh in on that? That's a resource that you'd like to recommend.
Yeah, so just building on the comments about how great the national labs are. So a couple programmatic resources for any New Mexicans in the audience. I think to Bill's earlier point about getting a diversity of backgrounds. So we have two programs in the state that Los Alamos National Laboratory and Sandia offer for technical assistance. One is called NMSBA. If you are a rural company, you can get up to $40,000 in technical assistance. And this is kind of a light engagement, but really just to help overcome challenges. It's also a really great way to get to know researchers and programs at the labs, which we can be kind of opaque on the org chart sometimes. So it's a good way just to understand the capabilities. The other one is called Trigger, and so if you have a collaborative research agreement or a license with the labs, you can get up to $150,000, sort of unburdened at either lab, which is significant, right? And this is really to think about technology maturation. So both are good, and even just having the early conversations are a good way to, I think, get acquainted with what we do and what we can offer there.
Thank you, David. There's also the LEAP program, which is the Lab Embedded Entrepreneur Program offered through LANO. And I think they're going into their third cohort this next year and really focusing on the biosciences and I think cyber technologies. Just putting that out there in case someone in the audience is also qualified for that. And you don't have to be in New Mexico. You can be from out of state to participate. Is that true also, David, for the other programs at Sandia?
So for Trigger and NMSBA, you have to be registered to do business in the state. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. And Nina, if you want to weigh in on a good resource, I'm sure you have several.
Absolutely, absolutely. I second Dan, right? The NIH reported on is a great resource that entrepreneurs can just go quickly put in a keyword search and pull up, what kind of projects are being funded by the NIH, not just NCATS, but across different institutes of the NIH, right? So that's a great tool that I recommend. And NIH also has other resources for our awardees, our SBIR, STTR awardees, like the I-Core program. Right? The purpose of the I-Core program, the funding institute actually pays for the company to go through this I-Core program, which is a hands-on mentored training program. It's about 8 to 9 weeks long. And basically it gives the company opportunities to, network, tons of opportunities to network and, expand your professional network. And, the program also provides tools and guidance to the small business entrepreneurs so that they can be successful at the market. So that's one resource, and I think we pay about $50,000 for a company to participate in this program. There is also the Technical and Business Assistance Program. Again, unfortunately, these are all for our awardees, phase one awardees. But basically, the Technical Business Assistance, again, is where the company can actually have, a third-party NIH consultant give them an unbiased review of their business and technical plans and help them make wise decisions, minimize risk, and they would even help you do an IP, market analysis and help you with IP filing and things like that. And of course, there's the Entrepreneur in Residence program that most of our awardees leverage, right? So, they are experts they've been entrepreneurs and they are more than happy to have a one-on-one conversation with our awardees and guide you again to be successful in your market. Refine your ideas, do customer discovery, talk to people. So those are some resources that I would share from NIH.
Thank you, Mina. And another kind of resource that we have available, and I don't know either Dan or Bill if you participated in these, but we have incubators and accelerator programs throughout the state. I'm learning more about them, and I've been here 5 years. And it's interesting how they seem to not be yet on the radar of some of our founders or startups. And I think that there's going to be a resource. You can go to the EDD website and look at their toolkit. But these kinds of resources, we also need to connect our startups with, our innovators. They need to know that that's out there to help them, that they don't have to carry that load by themselves, or even co-working spaces. That's also very engaging for an innovator to be in a co-working space and talking to other innovators as such. So I think that resources go beyond just funding here in New Mexico. And there's a lot that we have to offer that we need to be out there really highlighting to our innovators and continue to encourage that kind of innovation. I'm going to ask each of you to share a story, if you have one, regarding your experience with innovation. I think, Bill, you have shared a bit, and it's been terrific. But is there another example any of you would like to share with your experience, either taking your technology as an innovation forward or someone else's?
Well, I do have a great example. Yesterday in the news, the Department of Energy announced that Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, National Ignition Facility, had achieved fusion and had about 1.5 times the power of what they put in come out. And I worked there on site in 2010 when we did the first shots for the Missile Defense Agency and the Defense Threats Reduction Agency. And anyhow, we were all learning the system and literally to make things that the government needed for their applications required me to actually create a new material from the periodic table of elements up that, according to the physics, would do what the government wanted it to do. So I thought that was great timing for our panel.
Absolutely. I saw that. It was fantastic. Dan, can you share some?
I was just thinking which context of innovation, but I think a good example is there's a company out of New York that I've been working with that has an NIH and NSF grants that I've helped them with in the past, and they do research around heart rate monitoring and have used big data to come up with better ideas of identifying where those problems are, doing it in a shorter time than currently, so saving time, money, all those things, and also taking the human out of a lot of that analysis. But it was really interesting because what we're finding is that same technology can be used to look at some of brain electrical activity and strokes and other things like that. So it's really, and that's just a whole bunch of people together, talking about how else can we use this technology, how else can we use these algorithms. So those are the kind of things that's pretty exciting to watch. That how that stuff evolves over time.
Absolutely. Something you said rang a bell with me in terms of an innovation in its evolution and how an innovation can then be, to Bill's point, adapted into another use. And it might even make more sense in that, like a second use that you've adapted versus the very first thing that you intended for that innovation to do. David, do you have such an example or a story you'd like to share about one of your?
Yeah, so I think on the other end of the spectrum from the NIF announcement, which was very exciting, I think, for everybody. So through one of the technical assistance programs that we have, companies come and we don't expect them to know who they're going to be working with or how they're going to access the labs. But a few years ago, we had a group come. They had a mobile canning line, so it's a flatbed truck that cans beer for breweries, which there are a lot of in New Mexico. And this is a great thing, right? So before a brewery gets big enough to do their own canning, this allows them to, get on the shelf at grocery stores and export. And they wanted help with this inline canning process that would essentially, let them do some nitrogen dosing and kind of replicate what you see in a Guinness can when you open it up. So anyway, we matched them with folks that had deep expertise in computational fluid dynamics for very, very different applications. So national security, energy focused work. And it was this great combination, right? So they were able to take the very specific niche knowledge that they had developed over the last 20, 30 years and apply it to this new sort of process, right? And I think it's a really good example of how we do knowledge transfer. And it lets our folks also just, see their work in a different context, which can sometimes help get unstuck on problems that they're working on, but also for some really immediate practical use, which is great. So, yeah.
Great example. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, let me throw out one more example I was just thinking of. Is sometimes the problem, the struggle with innovation, is the people that you're pitching your idea to, you're throwing your application at, aren't as far along in innovation in their head. So there's an example of, soon after the iPhones came out, a software company, Inexol, that we were working with, we had this idea for first responders of way of tracking their exposures to different chemicals and stuff based on, location data that the iPhone made possible and all this stuff that all of a sudden you have this small device that made all these things possible. And we put in an application, and early on it was the NIEHS, and it didn't even get scored. All right, and the comments were just people didn't understand what was possible now, what sensors were in the phone and things like that. Like 18 months later, we dusted off exactly the same thing and sent it back to NIEHS as a resubmittal, and really didn't change anything. I mean, updated a few things, and it got a perfect score from NIH. So sometimes with our innovations, we're farther ahead, as entrepreneurs than potentially the people reviewing that. DoD and NASA is a little bit different because they're making up their own topics. They sort of know what state of the art is. But for the rest of the granting agencies, it's something to think about, that sometimes you have to really dumb down what you're saying, start a little bit simpler.
Yeah, I totally hear you, Dan. We've heard this before, right? You're not the first persons. The review can definitely be better, and I totally get that. But let me share a positive story, right? So we had an SBIR awardee at NCATS, and he had applied for SBIR funding to develop a paper-based diagnostic for digestive disorders. And this was right before COVID. And when COVID hit, right, he had to be innovative. So guess what he did? He actually used the same technology for rapid diagnosis of COVID. And now it's FDA approved, and he is marketing it. He is doing these rapid testing service out of a van, mobile vans. And you can see those companies, vans, all over the Madison, Wisconsin region. So, I mean, that's I think an excellent example where the entrepreneur really, was creative and could pivot because the situation demanded him, and was successful in doing so.
What I'm hearing from most of you is, in terms of your innovation being successful, you have to be able to pivot. You need to be a risk taker. Absolutely. All entrepreneurs, I think, are risk takers in some way, shape, or form in order to really succeed in bringing their technology or innovation forward. What other tidbit or advice would you give to an innovator today? And go ahead.
So I'll say you got to be fearless because fear is the resistance to change. And during the course of 6 years, I've had to pivot a couple of times. And the one thing that you'll find is that the only constant is change. Um, so I'll steal something from Elon. Sometimes your journey is going to be like eating glass and staring into the abyss.
Go ahead, everyone weigh in. Dan?
I would go, if I was going to do a one word thing, I would say persistence. I think Bill's fearlessness is good, but that persistence, especially if, I mean, when you're applying for grants, especially first time appliers out there, there's no whining until you've been like turned down 6 times. All right. So, I mean, just keep on plugging on the idea, keep on getting better partnerships or pulling, add to your credibility with the national labs, with, thought leaders, those kind of things. But that persistence is one of the key things for this field, this space.
So if I can go next, I just want to build on to Dan's point because, we've seen that at NIH and more so at NCATS, right? I mean, people who've been very persistent, that's one of the biggest advantages of applying to the NIH Small Business Program is that every application gets a summary statement. So the reviewers are going to, point out your weaknesses and strengths in your application. So historically, we have seen that when the PI, doesn't take it personally and takes into consideration the weaknesses and addresses those weaknesses and puts in a stronger application the next time around, they've been successful. So I second Dan's point that entrepreneurs and innovators have to be persistent, especially if they are looking for non-dilutive seed funding from the NIH. And I would also say that don't be afraid of the government. We are human beings too. I mean, I know folks get intimidated by federal agency, but reach out to us, talk to us, and I'm more than happy to have a conversation, one-on-one conversation, and help you through this application process. Trust me, that's my job, and I just enjoy doing it, and it's so gratifying to see companies get grant and be successful in whatever they are doing, right? So please reach out to us and talk to us, and like Dan said, reach out and make those strategic partnerships. I think that's very important too.
Excellent
Yeah.
points. Yeah, David, go ahead, add. Yeah.
So just to pile on there, I also think that you should not be afraid of the government because we do want to work with small businesses. And I think I would recommend just reaching out early and often, and exploring that. So we want to work with you. And when there is a partnership there, we become accountable, right, for helping our partners build the best version of what they have in their head. So we're also an ear, I think, to government markets and government use, right, and can help businesses understand what they need to do to scale, in certain verticals. So I think best advice is just reach out early and often, see if there's programs and partnership opportunities, big or small, that can help you just develop that foundation.
And I want to add on to that for just a quick moment in terms of reaching out to government entities. I don't know if it's just fear. I also think they don't know how. I think they need a path to, someone needs to help lead them, or open that door, or like I said earlier, connect them to those government entities. Because I think our early innovators don't know how to approach that. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think.
It can be a challenge.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh no, Mina, please.
Go for it, David.
Yeah, I mean these are large research organizations, so there's also large bureaucracies. A lot of these groups have partnership pages. The SBIR offices are great places to start. And then you can look at sort of the intellectual property pages. Most labs have those, and just how to work with us. So it's a good place to start. And there are folks at every organization who are tasked specifically with just pathfinding and making those connections.
Absolutely. In terms of being an entrepreneur, or I think it takes a certain kind of, like you said, Mina, I came up with stamina or persistence, but you also have to have a bit of self-confidence in not just your technology, but you, and to be able to, as they say, have a little faith, in me, so to speak. I think that you have to present that when you get in front of, or you're presenting to, let's say, an SBIR, or you're presenting to an investor group with your innovation. You really have to exude a certain kind of confidence in what you have going.
And we have resources in the government to help companies with that, Sue. Help you with pitch coaching and all those other resources that our awardees can leverage. But the first step is you're right, believe in yourself and believe in your technology, and just make those strong partnerships and reach out to folks, and not be afraid to ask for help, right?
Mm-hmm. We mentioned resources. The folks at the FAST program down at Arrowhead, they're like an open dictionary. I mean, they can introduce you into a lot of different of these resources, especially the lab. We're going to open up for questions, I think, here soon, in a couple of minutes. But if there's any last diamond in the rough that you'd like to share with our audience, please do.
I just wanted to quickly say, thank NMFAST. And, in the past, we have partnered up, NCATS has partnered up with outreach events spreading the word about NCATS and letting entrepreneurs know about resources and funding opportunities from the NIH. And what we have seen is, NMFAST is definitely more like a gateway to the idea states, right? I mean, when we partner with them, we see a lot more participants, attendees from the idea states, which is a great thing. So I just wanted to say thank you to NMFAST for opening up the gateway for us.
I wanted to mention a couple of accelerators, incubators. So there's one that's now into its second year. It's the National Security Innovation Network, or NSIN.mil. They call it the Emerge Accelerator. It's for companies that are partnered with universities that have a dual use technology. That's nationwide. Here in New Mexico, we have a lot of New Mexico companies, but this is also open nationwide. There's one called the New Space Incubator, which I'm in right now. That's through New Space New Mexico. Go to their website and take a look at their future incubator programs. The Navy has a program now called Navy Launch. Is their incubator program, and if you Google accelerators and incubators, you can find them all over. And some of these pay stipends, but they expect you to be in the program for 4 months. You might get $100,000 to cover your overhead. Some require on-site presence, some are hybrid, and some you can do via Zoom.
Thank you for that, Bill. I almost feel like we should be putting all of these in the chat, but perhaps we can follow up with that. Anyone else want to weigh in before we open up to questions?
Well, let me just offer a little bit of encouragement to the people that haven't submitted proposals yet, or submit something. This is the old thing, done is better than perfect. All right, don't just get something in there, get the feedback back from the Institute. It's going to force you to talk to people, talk to customers. It's a great tool of getting something done. So I just encourage people not to get stuck and not think what they're doing is good enough. Just put it out there.
Really good point. Kind of light a fire under them.
Maybe.
David or Mina, any last tidbits? If not, then I'm going to roll this over to Dell. If you want to join us with the questions.
Yes, we definitely can. We have a veritable slew of questions for everybody here. So, looking at some that seem to be pretty big drivers, and I think this speaks towards the heart of the panel title is innovation as a business practice, and really your business practice is go out there, be successful, commercialize. We have a question on should I pay someone to help me market my innovation before it is fully commercialized? And we'll just round robin. Whoever wants to add to that and then build upon answers, y'all go ahead.
Dell, do you mean like a test market before full commercialization?
I think that can be addressed in whichever way makes sense to the speaker, whether it is, looking at doing marketing campaigns, getting out there, getting in, flyers, putting up websites. I think the purpose of the question is how important is that marketing before commercialization, and does it really help drive towards innovation as a business practice in everybody's eyes?
Let me jump in there for a second. I mean, I think I have some examples of some context. We use a lot of phase 2 work. Um, we tried to stay away from humans because we don't want to get in the whole human subjects, IRB stuff, but we use a lot of focus groups. So in the context of software, think about it in context of software, user experience, all those things, which is sort of what they're talking about. But what we do is we're leveraging the grant itself to get some of that market research done. And so that's sort of, I can't think of an example where I've paid, for marketing to happen before, in the development stage. Um, but we do leverage, the government money for that.
Yeah. And I think one of the questions that you see in almost any SBIR or STTR set of proposal instructions now is, do you have marketing or management expertise in-house? And if you don't, how are you going to do it? So I think each individual business owner, if you're going to be a government contractor and start doing cost plus fixed fee contracts with the government, marketing is one of those unallowable costs that affects your rate structure. So you might consider, if you're going to market at all, or if you do, how much you're going to impact your rates. But that goes to paying people. But there's certainly a lot of marketing you can do on your own for free. Small Business Development Center will help you set up a Google Ads page. You can use your LinkedIn, your Twitter, your Instagram, whatever social media you're doing. I'd always go the free route.
Great. And okay, let's pose another question here. And I think this is a good one for Mina and David, because both of you kind of talked towards the value of, doing things like connecting with a university or a lab or, a larger partner like that. But you both highlighted that it can be, I don't know, cumbersome, scary for businesses. So for both of you or for any of our panelists, do you have any best practices that you would share for people that want to make that connection? How do they go about it? How do they actually, tap into those resources or expertise? What are just some good ways to engage, connect, and make that, connection useful and valuable?
Well, at the NIH, I can say the seed office has a list of program officers and program directors who for the small businesses at various institutes, and that information is out in the public, right? Like again, it's in the seed.nih.gov, and I will just email the person and say, hey, this is what I propose to put in my grant application for the phase 1 or the phase 4 too. It doesn't matter, but just reach out and say, share your idea and see if it aligns with their mission space. And when folks reach out to me, I'm more than even happy to have a one-on-one conversation with them over a Zoom call and go over those draft specific aims or milestones with them. And if I think it's not within the NCAT's mission, then I would be more than happy to refer them to my colleagues at the other institutes. So reach out, talk to us. Don't be afraid.
Yeah, I agree. I think, there's some asymmetry that happens, right? So between startups and labs, just where you have kind of the large bureaucracy. But behind that, I think there's a lot of there's been an increasingly large focus on accessibility. I think across the federal complex. So it can seem like this monolith of that's sort of unapproachable, but there are people like Mina at every agency that you can connect with that are individuals and do want to help. So I think just again reaching out early and often and not feeling like you need to have a full grasp of all the capabilities and mechanisms for engagement.
Great. And actually, picking up on a thread that Bill mentioned earlier, he talked about a couple of accelerators. Mina, you talked about like the NM Fast program. For each one of you, there are a lot of different accelerators out there. There's a lot of different support services. Do you think that working with an accelerator, working with some type of support organization, do you think that those are actually valuable at the end of the day for people that are trying to develop these proposal packages? And what's something you think everybody should get out of one of those?
I'll let Bill speak first.
You are
You're
muted.
muted, Bill.
There it is. So if you've never done a SBIR or STTR proposal before, if you're from a non-traditional business, then I 100% recommend that you either go out and find a consultant like Dan, or take advantage if you're in New Mexico or any other state. They all have a FAST organization. I know that Dell, Mackey, and Dana and the staff down there, I don't know, you guys must have done hundreds of these by now. They know the ins and outs of writing these, and you definitely want to get some help. Even a seasoned guy like me, I go out and I get some help sometimes, especially if it's a new organization. There are new organizations now. There's a Space Force. I've never won a National Science Foundation. I've never won a National Institute of Health. In fact, I find them both very intimidating. So get your help.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if the application process in itself can be a daunting task, right? So it really helps if you reach out to experts like the NM Fast and other accelerator programs who have done that for so many years. They know they have helped so many people and have been successful in this. So absolutely, yeah, reach out to those resources. And there are several resources that the NIH has and consultants. Like the applicant assistance program that we have for first-time applicants, and that's exactly what they do, right? Walk the applicant through the application process. Of course, granted, you're the expert in your area, and you got to do the grant writing, but just getting past that application process and having the opportunity to talk to program officials, I think it'll go a long way.
Great. Dan or David, anything to add to that? Or Sue?
I'll throw it out. I'll throw something out. I think it's the programs that you've been running, Dell. Those 8-week workshops. I think for a new company are perfect because it's the right amount of time to get something done. I think that model is amazingly good. So, it seems like the companies that we've worked with in that type of model that are successful are ones that are completely engaged in getting through it. And I think we help. I think consultants or experts help a lot, especially in the idea of scope, making sure the project's not too big, making sure that the story is concise and understandable. That you're not. I mean, especially when something's more technical, it's hard to keep reviewers focused on what's going on. So, no, I can't even imagine doing this. I mean, the first one I did it after a workshop, a writing workshop back in 2003 is the first one I submitted, and I couldn't imagine doing it without that workshop.
Sometimes when I'm working with startups, innovators, they have certain capabilities, but they don't have all capabilities, right? And so bringing in those consultants to help them is a smart move. You can't be all things to all people. And so, for example, they might not really be strategically thinking about their business and where their innovation is going to go next. So I agree with Dan, especially in terms of reaching out. And Bill, you said it as well. And Nina, just don't be afraid to ask for help.
Well, and glad that you gave the accelerators a plug there, Dan. For anyone that wants more information about those multi-week accelerators, head to the NMFast website. And we've had a lot of really great questions. We're about to run up to time, so let's do one just real quick final question, because I think this is actually a good one from the audience. Really kind of gets to a big purpose for this panel. How do you actually address innovation and something like a proposal? Just any quick tips, because innovation is new. Innovation is something that hasn't been done before. How do people actually explain that well in a proposal when they may be running against somebody that is not necessarily combative, but doesn't understand why this is something that is very unique?
I can take that one, Del. So, reviewers, when they look at the application, they're going to see if there is, if a problem has been identified. Is there a gap? And how does your tool or technology address the gap? And that's where I think the innovation comes into play. So I hope that makes sense and that answers your question.
Let me pile on there a bit, because I look at it as sort of innovation in context or technology in context, which is exactly, so how does it fit in the industry? How does it fit where the product, if you're doing a new material, how's that going to change the way airplanes are designed in the future, or how is that going to change something else? So helping with that context is so technology roadmaps that are out there for different industries, lean on those things too.
Great. Those are all excellent answers. And that is going to be our last question and take us to time. So I'm going to turn it back over to Garrett to get us transitioned.
Thanks again, Del, and thank you so much to all our panelists for that awesome panel. Some really stellar information there. Well, hopefully, everyone, you have a better understanding of innovation and why it makes sense to model your business processes around continued development and growth. Now, we are going to take a quick break for lunch, but don't stray too far from your screen, as we'll be starting a working lunch panel around 12:10, and we'll hear some pitches, some quick pitches from different SBIR and STTR agencies. So stay tuned for that.
Hey!